Okay, happy Sunday and Ekaro Adura family and prayer warriors. As always, we give honor to all of the elders, to all of the priests, to all of our brothers and sisters who are joining us in prayer. Of course, we also give honor to our collective Ashe. It is my honor to introduce this week's guest inspirational speaker, Dr. Alexandra. Hope she doesn't mind. I'm going to refer to her as Alex because that's how I was introduced to her. But she holds a PhD in political science from the University of Chicago and BA in political science and African American studies with honors from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. She is an assistant professor of political science at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, City University of New York. Her intellectual work focuses on race and politics, urban politics, and political behavior with broad specialties in American politics and political theory. Her manuscript in progress argues that in order to accurately capture the political engagement of Black women living in poverty, a fundamental expansion and redefinition of what is considered political is needed. Alex has won multiple grants and fellowships for her work on poverty and political behavior. Most recently, Dr. Alex was a university postdoctoral fellow in the Africana Studies Institute at the University of Connecticut for the 2016 through 2017 academic year. And Dr. Alex was awarded a postdoctoral fellowship at UConn as a part of the Collaborative for Equity through research on women and girls of color. She is an espiritista. She considers herself to be a baby priest in the Lukumi tradition, and she is initiated as a priest of Dada. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So just flag me if any sound issues. So first, I want to thank my godparents, Asabi and Baba Ilari Oba, Willie Ramos, for giving me permission to speak in front of you all today. And thank you to Ernestine for inviting me. I have to be honest with you guys. It's interesting. I've been doing public speaking for 15 years now, 10, 15 years. And I don't think I've been as nervous as I am right now. So bear with me if I stumble a little because, you all are my elders in my community and I'm a very mushy person. So it means a lot to be here in front of you guys because, like I said, I'm going into my 10th year of Ocha next year. But I still very much consider myself a baby priest in this tradition, right? And maybe that's a feeling you always have to some degree. You always feel like you're in the process of learning and there's more to be learned. And some of that comes from my history as an academic, right? Like the worst academics are the ones that think they know everything. And I found, as it was with most things, in humility, accepting that there's always someone else with a little bit more wisdom than me has gotten me really far. So what I'm going to talk about briefly today, Ernestine, what time did you want me to speak until?
About 15 minutes, but okay, I don't want
to
cut anybody off.
Okay, so like around 11:25 then would be about okay? Okay, cool. So what Ernestine has asked me to speak about today is my experience being initiated as a child of Dada, right? As I'm sure most of you know, Dada is not a Orisha who is commonly crowned here in the US. And so I agreed to talk a bit about what that experience was like for me almost 10 years ago now, and what it continues to be like to this day. So, unlike so many folks in New York, right? I'm originally from Detroit and I went to graduate school in Chicago, which is where I met Asabi and became a part of Ile Osi Khan. I did not grow up in this tradition. I didn't know anything about ATRs at all. My father is from Haiti and my mother is from the US. And although my mother's mother's mother, my great great grandmother, came from a long line of mothers of the church, my grandmother and then my mother very much rejected religiosity and the church, right? My mother is, I always call her a bougie Black Panther hippie because she was very much all about like, God is wherever you are. And so let's be adventurous about where we seek them. And so we went to Catholic Mass every Sunday for, our first 10 years, not because she particularly believed in Catholicism, but because she thought the structure was good for us. I recognize now that probably had something to do with my Haitian lineage a bit, but at the time she always talked about like, we just go to this because we want to learn some things, but don't believe these people. There's no such thing as the devil, right? She used to tell us that every week. There's no such thing as the devil. So if anybody tells you there's a devil, run away from them. So as little Black girls growing up in Detroit, that made us kind of oddballs, right? To like not really be connected to a church home in that way. But my mother was always going to, sweat lodges and Buddhist retreats. We got our transcendental meditation mantras at 11 and 10 respectively. She was about spiritual exploration in all forms. And so I never just had a really kind of strong sense of spirituality in that sense. When I went to college, I tried to join like the Black gospel groups and the Black prayer groups, but it was just too much devil and damnation for me. So that didn't quite work out. And it wasn't until I moved to Chicago in 2007 and then had a series of considerable trauma in the graduate school space that I kind of came to my knees and was like, I need a relationship with a higher power. Like, that's the only way I'm going to survive this. So then the question became, okay, but what higher power? Who? Right. And it was through seeking elders at that time. One of my big brothers, play brothers, has been in my life for 17 years now, Dumi. I reached out to him and he had me read a book by Malidoma Somé on his journey to initiation. And I read that book and it changed my life. And then he had me read Ayanla Van Zant's 40 Days and 40 Nights, and that changed my life again, right? And for the first time, I'm thinking about my home as a spiritual space, as a space that I co-create with God. But God wasn't scary, right? And that was really transformative for me. And so Dumi eventually got me in touch with Baba Willie and Asabi, and the rest is history, so they say. So quickly after that, you know how you have that kind of sense of certainty, right? That kind of certainty that you're in the right place in the right time. And that's very much how I felt the first time I went to Asabi's home in Chicago. So a couple of months later, I had my head marked by Baba Willie, and they go through the entire pantheon, and it's like, no, Yemanja, no, Oshun, no, Shango, no, like everybody, and again, I'm super new to this. So I'm like, oh my God, that's everybody. Everybody said, no, nobody wants me. This is terrible, right? So I'm like freaking out on the mat. And my godmother, being the intuitive that she is like, if you don't calm down. And so my head is marked with Dada. And I'll be 100% honest with you. I was 23, 24 at the time and did not know much about anything. And so I felt a sense of disappointment because I was like, who is this? Like, what? Like, I thought I at least was going to get somebody I could Google on the internet. Like, what does this mean that I have an Orisha that like I legit can't find any information about, right? This is back in 2009. And it drove the academic in me crazy because it's like, what do you mean I can't get to know my Orisha via research, via knowledge seeking, via books? Like, now I see it so clearly why it happened in this way. But at the time, that was my only way of understanding the world, is through a very particular Western notion of knowledge seeking. And so when that was cut off from me from the get, I was like, well, I don't know what to do. And then to add insult to injury, there was a lot that my elders couldn't tell me, because they had to seek their elders, right? But also a lot of things that are particular to the cult of Dada are for priests, right? And so I spent the next 3 years as a Orisha, knowing very little about the Orisha that is on my head. But I did begin interviewing various elders in the tradition. And every time I met somebody new, I was like, do you know anything about Dada? Can you tell me something about him? Right. And I should pause here to say that Dada is a multi-gender being, right? So some lineage. So when you learn about the patakis of Dada, generally they're introduced as a woman, right? As Shango's sister, older sister, who raised Shango. But then when Shango lost his crown, to be a king, you had to be a man. So the Pataki talks about how Dada became a man, right? So this is why you'll see in some lineages, right, we salute and talk about Dada in terms of male pronouns, but it's just as correct for some lineages to salute as a woman and to use she, her pronouns, right? So in our lineage, we speak to Dada as male. So the next 3 years, I am just moving along, trying to figure things out, not feeling super connected. And I become very, very ill with lupus. And a couple of years later, it comes up that I need to get initiated to fortify my health. And so I got initiated in Miami, Florida, in June 2012. And it remains in my mind as one of the most loving experiences I've ever felt in my life. To this day, I've never felt such profound love. And it was tremendous. And it was crazy because I didn't know the majority of the priests who were there. My godparents invited priests from all over the country to witness my initiation because Dada is this rare Orisha, and there is some extent to like people want to see, right? But they also wanted me to be able to function as a legitimate priest in the tradition. And whenever someone is made to a rare Orisha, there's always questions of legitimacy, right? And so part of the way they protected me against that is by inviting people from all over the country. People, of course, we had lots of people from my Ile that I recognized, but there were a lot of people that I didn't. And so I was nervous about that. But, it's something about Dada's beautiful energy that just brought out tremendous love for me like I hadn't ever experienced before. I was very, very ill. I could barely sit up. I could barely walk at this point. And there are elders who are 60 and 70 years old massaging my hands and rubbing my shoulders and singing songs in my ear and praying over me. And I remember thinking that like, the Orisha are going to teach me what it means to be loved in a community-based way, right? I had undergone a lot of difficulties growing up, and I've always been a kind of difficult personality. So to be loved immediately like that on site was transformative. So I get initiated. I'm sick the entire time. And God bless those senior priests who had to deal with all of that drama. But now I'm initiated to an Orisha I still don't really know. And I'm asking my godmother, like, well, how do I develop a prayer practice? What do I do? You know, like at least the children of Oshun, they can go ask an Oshun priest what it's like to love Oshun, and a prayer of Shango, a priest of Shango can go and ask what it's like to love Shango, right? But once again, I was in this position where I didn't have anyone to ask about what my relationship to God should look like. And so it put me in this terrifying and yet profound position to have to figure out what God felt like for myself, right? And it has been a profound 9-year experience, right? I still make a practice of interviewing every new senior priest that I come across. Please tell me everything you know about Dada. Please, you know, anything. It could be a story, it could be a song, it could be a whole history, right? Tell me about the social political history of Nigeria during the time when he lived, whatever. You know, and at this point, I have pages upon pages of personal notes that I've collected over the years. And that has been a profound experience to grow into that knowledge slowly, and for the Orisha to demand that I know Orisha with my heart before I can know him with my mind, right? To understand that the only way that I could come to know God for myself wasn't through the trust I had in others, right? That I would eventually have to come to trust myself, because I had always known myself to be untrustworthy. I had gotten into all of these abusive relationships. I had made all these terrible decisions, right? So I'm like, y'all can't trust me with this. Y'all want me to keep a whole cult of priests alive? And I feel like I can barely see myself out of a cardboard box. Like, are you serious? And Dada was like, yeah, exactly. Right? Like, you have to come to know me for yourself. You have to be an example, right? And you have to deal with the pressure of, you know, when people ask, okay, what does a Dada, a priest of Dada look like? Or what do they act like? Or how do they behave, right? It's me and one other person, right? And Moffett-Bateau, my godparents, because they were able to find the one other Dada priest in the United States to introduce me to. And she was someone who had been, you know, initiated as a child in Nigeria because of the signs that she was born with. And so she was a profound elder to me. But even she was like, girl, I don't know what's me and what's Dada, so we're going to figure this out together. Because she had been in the exact same position as me, right? Like, so she was just as fascinated in me, a baby priest, as I was in her. Because now we're looking at each other like, okay, what do we have in common? What is this saying? What does this mean? You know? And I'll never forget this, something Asabi told me. She was like, you know, people look to and desire particular Orisha because of what they think it says about them, right? So the quintessential example is always like Oshun, Shango, and Yemanja, right? If we're motherly, we want to be initiated to Yemanja. If we're masculine, we want to be initiated to Shango and all of these things, right? But one of the things that Asabi taught me is, she's like, that's backwards, right? We're initiated to the people who struggle most with what we struggle with, right? So had I gone into Dada or into my initiation saying, oh, okay, this is what priests of Dada are like, and so that's who I am, right? As opposed to growing into the knowledge of understanding that Dada teaches me what I have to learn, what I have to overcome, what I have to grow in, right? I would have missed a profound moment, an opportunity for transformation in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit. You know, and so one of the things that I tell folks who are new to Orisha traditions now is the best thing you can do is sit at the feet of your elders, full stop, right? Because even in their not answering your questions, they are putting you down a path that will profoundly change your life. And sometimes in the refusal to answer questions for you, that they are giving you the deepest blessings, right? My godfather could have given me what I now know is almost a book's worth of research that he had been doing on Dada for the last 10, 15 years. But what good would that have done me in getting to know God, right? Good would that have done me in developing my confidence as a spiritual practitioner, as a spiritualist, as an Orisha practitioner, right? Because I was, despite being in like one of the top PhD programs in the world, I was convinced and often still convinced I have nothing to offer, right? And so it's been in my journey to realize that it is often those of us who are the least known that have the most contribution to make, right? And that fame and celebrity and being public intellectuals or public activists or whatever, these aren't the things through which communities are built. It's not how we gain our spiritual license. It's not how we do our activist work. It's not how we grow in our character, right? It's the ability to sit in humility at our elders' feet and sometimes just accept that the silence is the lesson, right? So even when Ia Ernestine asked me to come speak to you all, right? I was like, girl, I could name you like 15 other people that would be way better. Like, I got a list. Because these are people who I recommend for speaking engagements all the time, right? And I never recommend myself, right? Because I'm always like, let me give you a list of all the things I don't know and why it's a terrible idea for me to come speak to people. But especially to some elders, that's a terrible idea. But once again, right, I have to walk on the wisdom of my elders. And Ia Shabi, my godmother, said, hey, Alex is somebody who should come and speak. So who am I to say no when this is someone who saw my road before I could even acknowledge a road was there, right? Like someone who has blessed me time and time again with the wisdom of their silence and of their words, but more than anything of their love, right? And watching my birth mother come into, my mother and I are so super close, and watching her come to know the Orisha for herself, right? And the first thing Oshun said to me on the mat was, don't get in your mother's business. Stay out of it. Her relationship with God is her relationship with God. So I don't care what you say or what you think. This is between me and her, not you, right? Which is super hard for my researcher self to do. I'm like, mommy, let me tell you about this new thing I'm in, right? And Oshun said no, right? So it was another example of the Orisha saying, stand back and learn in the silences. And in the silence of watching my mother's growth into the Orisha tradition and her finding her own godparents and her finding her own relationship with our shared answers has been another profoundly transformative moment that continues to teach me about myself and my relationship to God. And so I apologize if this has been a little rambly, but I figured whatever Dada wanted to say, we would say, and it would work itself out in the end. But I guess ultimately what I want to convey is that despite how terrifying the unknowns may be, they are often the site of our greatest wisdom, our greatest blessing. The things that feel the most heart-wrenching ultimately end up being the things that nourish our character in the most deepest way. And so I appreciate you all having me here today. Thank you so much. If there's any questions I can answer, I would be happy to. And thank you again to Ia Ernestine for doing me the honor of speaking in front of you guys. Thank you.